We live in a world of intense polarization. And polarization means, in my view of the world, this is from one side of the polarized gap. In my view of the world, there are good guys and bad guys. There are demons and angels. And our side are the angels and they are the demons. And the other side is saying, no. We agree on one thing. There are demons and angels. The only thing you got wrong was actually we are the angels and you are the demons. Now, why is that a problem? Well, first, it's wrong. It's almost never the case that that's true. It's sometimes true. Nazism was demonic. Khmer Rouge, Pol Pot is demonic. That's absolutely true. But most of us are doing their best. Reality is more complex. There's light and darkness, and there's darkness and light. And we need to liberate the spark of the sacred, the spark of value, the spark of goodness from all the broken vessels, and then bring them together into something that's more whole and more complete and filled with more love and filled with more dignity and filled with more truth and filled with more beauty. We have to move beyond demonization, because when you demonize something, okay, this is deep now, then you view them as a demon. And we kill demons. You demonize a person as the first step to murdering them. Always. Whether that's in Minnesota, right, 2 political officials, right, Democrats who were murdered, whether it's Charlie Kirk who was murdered, when you demonize someone on any side of any aisle, you give yourself permission to murder them. I want to share with you a story. It's an unbelievable story. I was living in Israel, and Yitzhak Rabin was the prime minister of Israel. And there was a man named Rehavam Ze'evi, who was a general, and he was the leader of a right-wing party, and not a fascist right-wing party, but a kind of security principle right-wing party. And he had a set of beliefs, which were not a drop of racism in them, but he felt in terms of the security threat to Israel, he had a particular set of policies. I am, at that point, the rabbi of a small community, right over the Green Line, right at the beginning of what's called today the West Bank, right over the Green Line, in what's called the consensus in Israel, meaning it was the part of the West Bank that everyone agreed was so close to the heartland of Israel that if you actually didn't have Israeli sovereignty there, Israel would collapse, and you would have terrorist raids, and buses blowing up all over the country. So that's where I lived. So I was the rabbi in this, small settlement community. The sentiments in this community were profoundly security oriented and what we would call today, right wing. The settlement communities were all right wing. I was not right wing, right? I had very, very deep sentiments about security and what needed to be done. And I also had very, very deep, I would say, kind of left wing, left leaning sentiments on multiple issues. So I was a contradiction to everyone. We get a newspaper put out by this party, right? Moledet was the name of the party, run by Ze'evi, this right-wing party. And they have a list of the terrorists in the Middle East. They've got like 10 terrorists. And at the bottom of the list, they have Yossi Sarid. Yossi Sarid is a left-wing member of the Israeli parliament, was completely opposed to their positions and was all about a kind of different vision of Israel, which was a kind of secular, democratic, and thought that all of the West Bank, Israel should get out of entirely, despite the security risks. But they just put him in a list of terrorists because they disagreed with him. So it was this kind of political satire, right? Yossi Sarid, he's one of the 10 terrorists. Now, you have to understand, I'm in a settlement community, right? And although it was in certain ways a liberal community, it was very much, moved by the energy of the right wing. And everyone's getting this newspaper and saying, yeah, right, Yossi Sarid, terrorist. And I was aghast. Like, I shook all night after reading it. And I'm like, 31 years old, 32 years old. No, actually, no, I was like 28. How old was I? I can't remember how old I was. Somewhere around there, 28, 29, 30, 31, somewhere in that range. I'm 103 now, so it was a long time ago. And I called the editor, Yisrael Harel, of the major magazine of the settlement movement, and I had helped him get some funding. So he took my call, although he wasn't thrilled to take my call. And I said, I'm writing something in the next magazine that you have to publish. And I told him what it was. He said, I can't publish that. I said, you have to publish it, or I'm not helping you with funding. I'm not talking to you ever again. So he published it. Here's what I published. I said, pure wickedness, Gomorrah. And I wrote a short article saying that anyone who demonizes another person and puts Yossi Sarid, right, on a terrorist list because you disagree with them politically and you characterize them that way, right? Anyone who does that is actually becoming demonic themselves, right? To demonize someone is demonic. You actually become demonic yourself. People were furious with me. My entire community was furious with me, right? How could you endorse Yossi Sarid, right, who was considered the arch enemy, right, the leftist, postmodern politician? I said, I didn't endorse Yossi Sarid's policies. I endorsed Yossi Sarid's humanity, right, his goodness. And this was a little settlement kind of on top of a hill, and there was only one public phone booth with a payphone, those old payphones. So one day the phone keeps ringing, like a couple of days later, and who's on it? Yossi Sarid. And he says, who are you? Like, what? How could it be that you're a settler rabbi, right, and you would write this beautiful thing defending my integrity and my goodness? And Yossi Sarid and I became friends, right? And actually, the last thing I did before I left Israel is I actually filmed a show with Yossi Sarid, back in 2005, 2006. He's actually a beautiful man. He's a beautiful man with deep motivation, with deep goodness, right? And with a deep sense of wanting to create a better world. That's actually who he was. Now, if you would have heard the way he was characterized, right, the words used, they were unbelievable. And that actually was not the person I knew. And so whenever someone would write me and say, Yossi Sarid is this, figure out, the end of the sentence, whatever you want the end of the sentence to be. I said, wow, Yossi Sarid is this. Okay, great. Could just send me any information you have, which shows that he's this. So people would send me an article where somebody said he's this. I said, no, don't send me an article where someone says he's this or that, a racist or whatever the word is. Show me something he said and did, right, which evidenced that. And then I'll reevaluate. I totally get that. I really appreciate the information. No one ever did. We can't demonize. We can't demonize. We can disagree. We can disagree vociferously. We can work, right, to show and bring evidence and adduce information to show that the policy of, or the direction, or the understanding of those we oppose is completely wrong. And we can even show that we think it's causing great harm in the world. I get that. We could totally do that. But we can't demonize, because when we demonize, we become demonic. Now, when we say we can't demonize, it doesn't mean we can't be clear, right? If someone's acting in a way which violates fundamental ethical principles, and we know that to be true, we can call that out with full ferocity, right? We can call that out with full ferocity. Absolutely. But there's a way in which we have to reserve that for very specific and rare cases, in very specific and rare individuals. When that becomes common parlance, and that becomes simply the nature of our discourse, it's a disaster. Right? We can't go there. We've got to actually take a high road. And in the high road, we need to actually understand, most of us, not all of us, but most of us are doing their best. And most of us are trying to act from a set of principles, right? And most of us are trying to actually be good people in the world. And that actually people are decent and kind, right? And good. And we have to speak to that decency, and we have to deepen our relationship to that kindness as a fundamental principle of who we are.